Alrighty, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Spotlight. Today we have another duo and a fellow ISU podcaster, ISU and affiliated. But we have Monifah Ponton and Kierra Jack, who are both podcasters on the Black Girl in College podcast. And they both talk about just the issues and struggles. But I don't want to put words in your guys' mouths. I want you guys to kind of introduce yourself. And like always, why don't you go ahead and just introduce yourselves and the important things that viewers know about you.
All right, well, hello, everybody. My name is Kierra Jack. I'm a junior here at Iowa State University, majoring in interior design, minoring in entrepreneurship. I'm also a RA here. Elijah is a fellow RA as well. I'll let you introduce yourself, and then we can both talk about the podcast.
Okay, yeah, and I want to say thank you for having me here. My name is Monifah Ponton, and I go to UNI. Sorry to the ISUs. My major is social work with a minor in mental health and criminology, and I am gladly in my last year, thankfully. So.
All right, well, Black Girl in College podcast, it really just kind of like what he said, it's our podcast sharing our experiences from our perspective. So just acknowledging that as Black women at PWI, which stands for Predominantly White Institute, we have a different experience of college and different perspective and struggles that maybe not everybody sees. So we just kind of bring light to those situations and start the conversations for others to have, because we're not the only ones who have our experiences happening. Not. So yeah, creating that community for folks. Yeah,
and it was just really like an idea. It was a summer. We were chilling in my room, and we were just like, we can't be the only people struggling this way in college. And we realized, like, we can't have the typical college experience because we are Black women at a PWI. So therefore, our college journey would be a little different. So we just wanted to share on different types of topics. And then we have so many other Black women and Black people in general who also relate, which is very helpful. Because, like, hey, no, you're not the only one going through that. So...
Right. Yeah. Well, I wanted to ask more specifically on the purpose of this show. So you guys use a couple terms when you're talking about this, and I want to know, like, what that means to you guys. Yeah. So when you say making sure that people feel heard and making sure that you guys feel heard and making sure that there's a safe space, what do you guys mean when you talk about those things?
Just talking about the essence of the term safe space, like, you can't have any conversation whenever you want, because things become political that shouldn't be political. Like, my skin color should not be political. It's not up for debate. Who I am. It's not up for debate, like you said. So a safe space is just being able to share your experiences, and it doesn't have to be a debate. It's just like, okay, that's your experience, and accepting that. Obviously, if you have further questions, like, that's okay, but it just shouldn't be political, me telling you what happened. I shouldn't have to back up my experiences by data type of thing. So It's like, come to me with your experiences, and it can be a conversation. It doesn't have to be a whole social experiment, because that's that's typically what happens with us. Did you have anything to add to that?
No, I think that was really good. And it's like, also in those safe spaces, you can say anything. Like, yes, you can still be wrong and you will be corrected in that safe space, but you shouldn't have to walk on eggshells around your own people and your own group of people. And then it's important, when we say be heard, it's not also just hearing our experiences, but it's also acknowledging them. So you can't just listen to our podcast and just go about your day. Like, you're listening and learning of another perspective. Therefore, it should change how you think. And maybe there's things that you've done all your life that you consider normal but was hurtful to other people. Therefore, you should adapt. And therefore, if you're not, we need to have a conversation. Because if you're okay with just hurting people willingly, that ain't what's up. That's all I'm going to say.
Right. And so is that the kind of response that you guys were fearing that you'd get, that people would make what you're doing political? Is that something that you get often when you talk about these issues? Or is that something that, like, you've seen and it kind of bugs you when that happens?
I mean, I'm a God-fearing woman. So I didn't fear anything of, like, pushback. Like, I knew there would possibly be pushback, because being a Black woman, you could expect when you're doing something good and great for a larger community rather than just yourself, there are going to be people who disagree because it goes against what they believe. But so far, I've had so many different people just stop me, want to talk and say, I saw that new episode, like, it's good. And when negative things happen, like, I just pray, because the Lord knows what I want to do, but it's what I have to do. So, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say also, I haven't gotten any pushback or even just feedback. I don't think it's really political. I think more than anything, people want to know more and ask questions. And that's what I like about our podcast. Like, It has opened up those conversations. And I notice, like, just how I interact with people, like, whether it's classmates, professors, and just, like, random students I'm just now meeting. Like, the conversations are different now. Instead of that small talk, it's more so like, I heard you say this. I've never knew that maybe this was offensive. So like, I want to know more about it. So I think that's been a good thing, a good outcome of our podcast so far.
Yeah, and I think it's super fun when you guys are, and super noble as well when you guys are doing this and you have a purpose and it's set out and it's described and you guys are getting after it. I think one of the coolest things is so many people want to start a podcast, but it never leaves that, the group chat where you're like, let's start, this conversation's super interesting, let's start, but you guys actually did it, and you started a podcast and you started doing it. I think that's super awesome, and a lot of people don't do that, but in regards to when you guys are running it, how do you keep that in mind? So when you guys are keeping this in mind, like, I want people to hear me, I want this to be a safe space, and you guys are writing your questions, you guys are coming up with your topics, how are you keeping that in mind, and how are you controlling? Do you ever find yourself, like, kind of skating out of that zone of wanting to be heard or keeping these in check, or do you find that it's pretty easy to stay in that?
I will say for me, I think it's pretty easy just because, like, this is my lived experience, so it's all I know. I don't have to do any deep critical thinking to say my opinion on these topics most of the time. Sometimes I do put more thought into my response and, reflect on it more just so I can have a better answer and just better conversation in general. But for the most part, it's like this stuff is, this is my everyday experience. Like, once we leave this room, like, there's stuff that reminds me every day of my experience. I could be simply just going to the car wash and something will happen that reminds me, what, I am a Black woman.
Exactly.
It's those type of things that I'm just constantly reminded of it. So I think that just kind of structures the podcast and helps it to flow so easily.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would definitely agree with that because it's like, I don't think we ever get out of that because, like Kierra said, it's our lived experience. So therefore, that's all I can talk about. Like, there's nothing else I can talk about. And there's times where we're like after we record and stuff, we'll talk outside for like 30, 45 minutes because I'm about to leave. But it's just like, we do that. But it's like things happen and we're like, we were just talking about that in the podcast. Or like, it's just, I don't know. I think it's easy if you're talking about your experience and it's real. That's also like, we're not lying about things. I wouldn't even want to lie about this. Like, the things that we go through, it is real, it's happening, and then it's just like we want to bring it to other people's attention, but also want other women and students of color just feel like they're heard because, like, I promise you, you're not the only one going through it.
Yeah, and I want to kind of touch on that. What do you guys describe as the importance of being heard from, like, an audience member? So when you guys are giving this opportunity, kind of describe what it feels like to be heard as an audience member.
I would say, the importance for me is just education and social justice, not thinking of it, like, on a political level, but I just hope that the viewers are, like Monifah said, just like changing their mindsets, shifting the way they think and their perspectives and stuff like that. And I think that alone just brings social justice to people and how they interact and just being aware, I guess, of how you're interacting with people of color and the things that you say. So I think that's what I have.
No, I definitely agree with that. And I would just say, I really strongly believe in that learning thing. Like, just because we're talking about it doesn't mean that we're also not learning either. Like, we're learning as well of other cultures, other communities, and we're just trying to say, hey, the cultures on campus, start noticing them, start interacting with them. So as an audience member, we just want people to feel seen and, that they're also being recognized for because we don't know what they had to do to get here in college. A lot of people have, great deals, the things that they go through. So.
Oh, yeah. And I wonder, when you guys are doing the show or when you guys started it, were there a few things that you really wanted to talk about, to get off your chest? Like, are there specific big picture ideas of your college experience? Like, what issue inspired or experience that you guys had inspired you to start this? And like, what kind of brought you to say that this is important, this is what I want to talk about? Well,
we're big believers in God, so that was definitely steering how we had to stay on this rope of what we wanted to talk about. But it was also, we knew that we couldn't be scared to talk about the other things because there's also maybe other Black people who are going through that, whether we have yet to go through it. So yeah, it was just any and everything, like, finding a community on campus, how to advocate for yourself on campus, safe spaces, we talked about like relationships and love, but not just in like intimate ways, but in the forms of friendships and giving of yourself and not expecting anything in return. And just like our modesty, we talked about that as well, like just our own experiences and just elaborating on them.
I would say definitely like the first episode of our podcast, first season, like that really sets the tone for just what we do and like the rest of the conversation that we have. It's not hard for us to come up with these different topic ideas because it's just like us talking about regular college things, but from a Black woman's perspective.
Right.
So that's where the conversation it never ends because there's a lot of things happening in college and our perspective is different in every single thing happening in college. So.
And were there any like big things that maybe people don't know about when they're trying to understand your guys' experience in college? Are there, are there big things that you guys want to talk about in your experiences that you guys have experienced, like big things that are specifically to the Black community or in regards to college or Black women in college, or are there specific things that you guys found people weren't understanding or knowing?
I think like that's a very broad question because I feel like a lot of people just.
Right. I mean, I got one thing that I went through. It was terrible.
Okay.
Give me like a million. I really would love to know.
I don't know if I have like one specific thing, but I will just say the main thing that we want is for like people to just be comfortable opening up that conversation, and not even open a conversation, just talk. Like we don't bite. You don't have to come into a space and
I promise I won't bite you. That is nasty.
We don't bite, and we're definitely not gonna swing on you. Like have a regular conversation because like we talked about it in many of our episodes, especially the first one. Just coming into class, being the only Black person, it's like I see you casually having small talk with them, but when you talk to me, you have to be formal.
Right.
We can communicate the same. Like we both speak English. We don't have to put on a different face. Like, oh, I'm talking to her. Let me clean it up. You don't have to do that. We can just talk regular. I think that's how you'll learn the most, when you're just open-minded and get out of the mindset that, oh, I can't relate to them, so like I can't really talk to them about nothing. Just as you would small talk with anybody else, just small talk with people of color. Like we don't bite, and we are more open-minded than you may think. Even if we seem quiet and shy, because I will say like maybe it goes two ways. Like if I'm entering an all-white space, like I'm not going to go in there, hey, everybody, like, because I already know what feedback I'm going to get. So sometimes like even if I seem quiet and reserved, like that doesn't mean I'm not open to talk. And that goes for like all people of color. We just, our experiences have made us that way. So yeah.
And to go along with that, I just want my white peers to understand is that we're also going through a culture shock, because I've had some of my peers in my class of color, and we talk about coming from a town or a high school, and it's so diverse, and you come here and it's like you the only student of color in your classroom, like, and that's difficult to digest, because it's also like, well, there's probably a language barrier. They probably don't understand the words that I use. They might not understand my experiences. And like even simple jokes. I've had jokes with people and it just went over their head and it turned into like an insult. And then I end up apologizing and it wasn't even meant to be like that. And I'm just like, you know what? I need a nap.
Do you remember what joke it was?
I think I said like, oh, girl, you ate that. And, it was like, that's a compliment, like you did your thing. And she was like, I don't like, she took it as like an insult. I was like, wow. It's like, so no TikTok. Got it. You know what I mean? It's just little things that maybe we do in our community that, I don't know, other people just, I don't know, understand. But it's also, I just wish they could see that as much as we're probably a culture shock to them, that they're also for us, because it's like we are outnumbered. And there's a lot of times I go throughout my day and I don't see anybody who looks like me. And when you pass me and don't say hi, like those tight lip smiles, I'm tired of it. Say hi, smile with your teeth. I know you got teeth. Like, smile. Like, say, hey, I'm not going to bite you. Like, we're not rude.
Especially if you're going to stare. Like, if you're going to stare, follow it with the hey.
Follow with the hey, or give me my face back. Like, I don't know what to say. You know what I mean? I just wish they would understand that, and that there's a lot of things that I feel like there's more, we have to adopt more than they do. You know what I mean? Because especially if I'm living on campus, like I'm around this type of environment 24/7. So I just want them to take that into consideration. So like you said, even if we're a bit more reserved, maybe look around like, oh, there's more of me than you, so you're not as comfortable. Let me go be that person to make you comfortable and welcome you here.
Right. Well, and I think one of the hardest things to understand, and my brother talked to me about, and he kind of put it in this perspective of like, white culture is kind of an absence of culture. Like, it's difficult to understand what that
I didn't want to say culture. I didn't know what other word to say.
No, I get what you mean. And I don't want to use it in whatever term, there's no negative term for culture, but like, I don't want to use it in a way of like us versus them or whatever it is. But it's difficult for like white people to hear, okay, like seeing someone that looks like me, because it's so foreign, because everyone kind of looks like you, like
Right.
especially if you're from a smaller town. And so can you guys go into a little bit more detail on like what that truly feels like? If you were to get in, what does it feel like to identify somebody that looks like you, or to be in a room where nobody does? It's difficult to kind of understand that from someone who has never had to, struggle with that. So like, what does that mean to you guys?
Yeah, I would say, so just thinking of, to put in perspective, I guess, like, okay, so in America, here in the United States, we speak English for the most part. A lot of people speak English. But then there's different slang. Like, people in New York, they use different slang than people in Texas, than people in California, right? So there's a all-around Black language, I would say, and some people refer to it as African American Vernacular English, so AAVE. So what it means to just like walk into a space and you see people who look like you, it's like I don't have to translate everything. I don't have to over-explain myself. I can just communicate effectively with you, and there's some things I don't have to explain just because we have that shared experience. So it's not necessarily like being in a space where there are no people of color, like I'm just gonna completely change my persona and just what's the word, code switch.
Yes,
I'm not going to code switch automatically, but it's almost like programmed in my mind. It's like if I speak this way, people are not going to receive it right. If I say these things, people are going to think I'm being funny, but I'm being serious. If I say this, then all of a sudden I'm aggressive when I'm just being opinionated, So it's just like not having to over-explain myself, over-translate myself. It's just like I'm in this space, I can talk, I can bring up race, and it won't just shut down the whole conversation.
Right, everybody quiet.
Because, in a non-political setting, race does pop up, okay? And it doesn't have to be a big deal. It doesn't have to be a deep conversation. If I say I'm Black, that shouldn't all of a sudden just make people uncomfortable.
Like, why did you bring up Frederick Douglass? Like okay.
It doesn't have to be anything that deep. So I just think being in a space of color is like I can just be myself. I can talk the way I want to talk. I can have more open-minded conversations just because there is that shared experience. So, yeah.
Yeah, and to go along with that, it's just like, it's also like when I walk in, it's not that I have to see people whose skin tones are like mine. It can be similar, but it's also like all of the things that I identify with, that it's represented in the room. So, not just being Black, but, are there women in the room? Are there, body types like mine in the room who could understand? It's not just like, and it's also that like people love to talk about just being Black. There's so much more a part of being Black that we all share. Like I'm a plus size woman, so maybe you can understand why I don't want to sit here. Other people might not understand that if we don't share the same body type. So it's also just having those different identities that I hold are represented in the room, so therefore I can be understood more.
Yeah.
Do you think that you two are representative of just the Black community in general? Do you feel like there is a representation? Because I think when I'm listening to people talk about race, it's only in the political realm, and so it changes my view on what it's like to hear people talking about that. And so when I listen to you two talk about it, it's so different, it's so personable, and it's a different view for me, and it's something that I'm discovering in this conversation, but then listening to your guys' show. Do you think that you guys are a general accurate representation of, like, do you feel like you personify the views that most Black people share, or?
Not at all.
I was just going to say no.
And I'm actually glad you asked that question, because that is the assumption that
one Black person does not represent everybody.
That represents us, and you can see in a political perspective how like it tears us down. If one Black person does something wrong, then it's, whoa, I knew those people
it's
were
all
bad.
of y'all.
You know what I'm saying? So just thinking of like everybody has different personalities and identities outside of Black. Like, let's say everybody holds at least 6 identities. Being Black is just one of those identities out of like all the 6. So just like not at all. I tell people that, I give that disclaimer, like I don't speak on behalf of the next Black person. They don't speak on behalf of me. So yeah, that's a good question to ask, just because like I represent myself well. I think I'm a very respectful person, but I can't say that like there's somebody else who has different views of me 100% who's also Black. But being that we are Black, we do have shared experiences, as in like trauma, but that doesn't like make us the same at all. So
right.
yeah.
No, yeah, I'm happy you said that, because a lot of people think that when one Black person speaks, they speak it for everybody. And I don't know when we had that meeting, but we didn't have that meeting, you know? So when things happen in the media or something, I'm sitting at home like, oh, she was wrong. You know what I mean? Like, the one person doesn't represent us all, because we all, like Kierra said, have so many different identities. And the identities that I have, I probably have nothing of the next Black person. And it is that trauma that we share, but at the same time, it's like we have shared experience, not the same experience. So we're still individually different people.
Mm-hmm. So then do you guys think that talking about race in a political setting is kind of hurting race in general, like race conversations in general?
100%. Not even trying to get in the political side on this podcast, but
right.
Just 100%. Like we said, like, everybody has their point of views. Like, people, when they talk about poverty, I know there is a majority of people of color in poverty, but
there's
now
a reason why.
There's the assumption that all Black people and people of color are poor. Like, I already have to fight those stereotypes. I'm gonna just give a quick story time. So I was trying to get my U-bill taken care of, right? Because that's thousands of dollars, regardless of what race is. Like, not everybody just has tens of thousands in their bank account. So, you know, I was meeting with a counselor, and I had like 6 since I've been here. So don't try to guess if you know. But I was sitting with a counselor, and I'm like, so the school keeps swearing that they have funding and all that. So, like, where's the funding at? Because you know how our schools like to say they got resources, but won't tell you where they're at. And then, so, like, basically in that meeting, initially, like, she said, I don't have, like, scholarships to pay her U-bill. But in that whole meeting, she listed me every resource as if I was homeless, just to be straightforward. Like, she was telling me the free clothing places to go, free food places to go, discounts for, like, you know, basic hygiene and stuff like that. And it's like, I appreciate that, but, like, why did you assume that I couldn't afford anything because I don't have tens of thousands? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, just because I don't have tens of thousands in my bank account doesn't mean that I'm poor. And now you're talking to me about housing and stuff like that. So it just kind of, it was definitely one of those things where it's, the political people will have one point of view. Long story short, people assume a lot about me. I do love resources, I will say, but, like, just
right, we probably use them, but it's like we didn't need them.
Yeah.
Don't make me a charity. Long story short.
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I wonder when you're talking about how you guys' perspective influences how you see the world. I think a lot of people are going to hear stories like maybe that one. And wonder, does that person tell that to everybody, or do they just tell it to you because of your skin color? And I wonder, when you guys are making assessments of how people treat you, do you think maybe you over-assess how much your race plays into it, or do you think you under-assess, or do you think it's accurate, or, like, what kind of algorithm goes into it? Because, again, I don't assume that anybody's saying anything about me because of my skin color, but that's because I don't have a reason to. And so I wonder how that, like, calculation works in your head when you're assessing, maybe with that story. Why do you think that was a political thing as opposed to just something that they tell anybody who's coming to ask about their U-bill?
I think, first of all, I'll just say that it's one of those things. Unless you're a person of color, you're not going to understand most of the stuff we're talking about. Everything. It's
not going to click.
Nothing's going to click, and that's just kind of one of the things, like, you just got to live with as a person of color. But once you see repeated patterns, like, I don't know, it's just, I'm going to explain it. It's not going to make sense. It's going to fly right over some people's heads. But once you see that pattern from your first memory ever, like, I have my first memory of experiencing racism, and I was 4 years old, and I still hold that memory in my brain. And science says you're not even supposed to really have memories from the age, but, like, just those repeated patterns throughout every stage of your life from a child and having to deal with that on a daily basis leading up, like, you can just kind of intuitively tell when it's race-based, and it's not just like, this is everything they do. It's something you can't really explain, I feel like. It's almost like, if you know, you know, but having those experiences over and over, you can't mistakenly have the same people asking the same questions in the same scenarios your whole entire life. I'm 21. That's 21 years of these different scenarios. So I can't just, assume all the time that it's like, oh, maybe it's just a person. But I'd say, like, to see the other side, like, there is sometimes, I feel like, just our experiences, sometimes it can get blurry of, was it race or was it not? But a lot of times it's race. But go ahead.
I was about to, everybody has biases that are conscious and unconscious. So, race plays a factor for me. So I can't, if it plays a factor for me, I know it plays a factor for other people. Like, I'm not going to deny history and the way that it has set up our minds. So therefore, and even if it's in a situation where it was like 5% in weigh-ins, but it depends on the situation where it was like, that's what makes it racist. That's what makes it wrong that you weighed in that other person's race. So like, I know sometimes I can tell if somebody's staring at me. Like there's a Hy-Vee near my school. I don't like going there because it's like they've never seen like a black person before. Like I'm a unicorn or something. And it's, first of all, I learned staring is rude. So I was told that staring is rude. So when that happens, it's just like, forget the grocery list. We just want to go. This is why I go to Walmart. You know what I mean? Like there is, and it's also that too. There's certain places I shop because I don't want to be stared at. Like I want to be looked at like a human being. Like I would rather be wrong in thinking that it was my race and this person comes up like, oh, I like your shirt. Like that gives me hope for society that you're not looking at my race as much. Or rather it's, oh, I've never seen someone's hair like that. Like how did you do that? Instead of being right and was like, oh yeah, it's because I'm black. And like, we don't want to be right in those situations, but it's also like most of the time we are. And I will say, basically. You know, we can't be naive because if we do, if I let somebody have a little leeway, usually it's my butt that's on the table. You know what I mean? It's usually I'm going to get the end of it. So for real, safety, caution, you know what I mean? So it's just, I will also say if somebody says it's about race and they're a person of color, believe them. Because it's their experience. They know more than you do. And like you said, as a white male, you probably never have to worry about that. So therefore, you know, you probably wouldn't have much to add to it because you've never had that experience before.
And I'm glad that you use that scenario, like people staring at you. And I just want to challenge people out there right now who are listening. If you know somebody and you're open to have this conversation, if you know a person of color, ask them if somebody looked at them and it was racist, because it's one of those
There's
things.
a look.
There's a specific look, and I can't explain that. I can't say, oh, they, look left, right, and blink twice. Like, there's not a specific look like that, but you know when somebody's looking at you because of how, like, your race, your skin color, and you look very different or quote unquote exotic. So like there's a look, but just to challenge people out there, go ahead and ask the question and see that like we're not just talking just to talk. Like these are real experiences of people.
Right. And it's like if you get past that, like not in no cockiness, Lord knows I'm not saying any cockiness, but I believe I'm a very kind, nice-hearted person. And that's why our friendship has lasted so long, because we have a lot of the same similarities in personality. So if you get past race, I promise you can learn of a great person. Like, ask yourself why race is such a barrier for you to get to know someone else. I would that look part, I would much rather have somebody clutch their purse than that. That look is so harsh. It's like they're looking in your soul, and it's just like.
Can you give an impression of what that look looks like, dude?
It's almost like so it's almost like, say
you're minding your business and it happens.
It's like you're getting stared at. And when you catch somebody staring at you and they look away real quick, but it's like almost like a scared. I would say the best way to describe it is like a scared look.
Like they saw Shaq. I don't know.
Like if you see something and like you're scared, but you're kind of stuck, like you're frozen. It's kind of that look.
Right.
Like it just, I'm scared, but my body's frozen. I don't know like what to do in the situation. But that's most of the time what it is. And it'll be in situations where it's like I didn't do anything that was like
I'm just coming down the
disruptive or scary. I just hit the corner and then you stop what you're doing and you're staring crazy like. And then you got me looking around like,
like it's not me. Right. I've had people make U-turns just so they don't pass me. And it's like, okay, I don't know if it's like I could be wearing something that's offensive, but I would not know that because people don't understand that race plays a large factor for us. So when you do that, the first thing I do think of is it because I'm black. Like it also, in my mind, I can't think of anything else first before I think of race.
Yeah, now you guys got me scared that I'm giving people the race stare. Because for me, I can't see, period. Like, I have horrible vision, so I'm always, like, staring at people to see if I know them. You know what I mean? So, like, I'm always like this, and then if they look at me, it's like, I'm not staring. You know what I mean? Like,
I would have just said
it depends. Like, if you're not staring at them and you don't look scared or shocked or, like, I don't know. It's just a certain look, though. Like, it's not just anytime somebody's looking at you. Because I can tell if somebody's looking at me and they like my shoes, But it's just a certain look. So if you don't got it in your heart, if you're not looking at them,
it starts in your heart. Okay, I believe that. I believe people can be racist, but I also believe that it can be a lifestyle. But I feel like that starts in your heart. Like that hate, it starts in your heart.
Yeah. So if you're looking at somebody and that's not on your mind, I don't think that they would pick up on think it was that.
I just would have been like, because a lot of people say I look familiar. I'm like, oh, he probably think I look familiar or something. Or like, I'm like, oh, what is Shorty staring at? But if there's a look, I would tell you.
You can tell. You can see.
Yeah. I would say also the look is often followed by action as well. Just because, like, sometimes, like, okay, I'm being stared at. Sometimes, depending on how hard you're staring, I'm going to speak first. You know, I'm like, hey. And, like, it depends on the response. Like, if it's like, oh, hey, sorry, let me get out your way. Like, you know, if it, like, it depends on, like, the response.
Because they got caught.
Because sometimes, you know, I be trying to test myself, too. I try to make sure I'm not victim blaming myself. And, you know, so I'll sometimes ask myself, like, okay, they're staring or they're doing too much. But maybe I'm tripping, so let me see. And if that response gives me the answer I don't want, then it's like, okay, I knew I was right. I know myself. I know my intuition. I know I wasn't tripping or nothing. So, yeah.
Do you guys ever find that race is playing a part in how you view other people?
Absolutely.
100%.
So what does that look like?
Well, I would say we all have our biases
I said that, them biases, conscious and unconscious.
Well, and you know how people say, like, your trauma from childhood, like, it shapes you as an adult, and it comes back, especially as an adult. My experiences of race, like I said, started in preschool, and I still hold those memories. And it's like, it's not like, okay, that one experience, like, I've had something happen my entire life. So if it's like I'm always treated this way, or I always see me ending up last, regardless of, like, what work I put in, and my word never being taken over somebody else who's completely lying. Like, you know, it just, those type of experiences, like, it'll just shape. I feel like it shapes me now when I see it sometimes, and I have to remind myself, like, to not be biased, to not assume that everybody is racist. That's something, like she said, a culture shock when I came to Iowa State. It was just, like we said, when you're in a room of 100
y'all there,
people,
y'all everywhere.
You're in a room of 100 people, you ain't seen one person of color. It's like, bro, I can't do this. Everybody's doing too much. People can't move over on the sidewalk, but I can't assume everybody's racist. But maybe people just have bad manners in general. But yeah, definitely race plays. I would say maybe more for people of color, just because we have to be so self-conscious. It's also a safety thing. Like, it's not just like an emotional thing. Like, you know, they made me feel this type of way. It's also a safety thing as well. So.
Yeah.
Talk me through that safety aspect of it, because I think I heard you mention earlier too about trying not to give somebody leeway because it could be generally unsafe. What does that look like?
So as I mentioned before, like, people taking, like, one side over the other. When things happen, it's like, it's almost as if I can't stand up for myself the same, because in the past, like, having to stand up for myself, like, whether that's something verbal that was said crazy, or maybe even something physical, it's like me standing up for myself, I'm always the one punished, and never the other person. So having that pattern throughout my life, it's still a safety concern, because I've had grown people who are more than double my age, like,
with mortgages,
like, literally lie like a little kid, and I'd be punished for it. And like, they're grown, and it's like, why would you make up a story, run with it, tell the story, and yet I'm being penalized for it? So it just, like, that can be a safety concern, because, like, you're always going to take their word. I'm always going to be punished, and it's just, especially depending on your context, like, where you're at. I don't know. It's a safety concern. I don't know. You can elaborate on that.
I mean, I don't even know how to say it. I think it's also like it's how I was raised type thing. Like, it's just inherently in us that. And when I say this, I'm not saying for my white peers who think of race that they're racist, but for people of color, when we think of race, it's not racist just for us to be cautious and safe. Like, maybe I'm assessing how you look, and then the fact that you're white, and it's just like, and where I am in the environment. And it's really crazy, because for them, they're probably like, well, they got a hood on, they're black. Like, we're assessing each other to make sure that we're not dangerous for each other or things like that. But I mean, I really don't know how to explain it. I mean, getting followed around the store, like, I know you're following me.
Around the store.
You know, you know, it was 3 minutes ago. It's like consistently every 3 minutes. You know what I mean? Or if I go into an area and you consistently check in on me, like, I know where I'm going. I have the app up. You know what I mean? I don't really know how to explain it. I feel like it's just a thing where I know I'm not safe, especially if I'm outnumbered. Like, if I can't look in the crowd and see if I can't see Kierra in the crowd, because we can share a look like, girl, we need to get up out of here. You know, that's a problem.
Also, to mention, I would say, like, the stories you see in the news, like, you know, like a race situation, like a kid was abused or something, you know, like something extreme like that because of the race, like, that's real life. And every black person, maybe not as serious as the stuff that makes the news, and sometimes that serious, but, like, we all have a story. Not even a story. We have multiple stories. So it just, like, we just got to be conscious and understanding, like, you never know. that person who seemed nice, you could be ending up in the store. You could say no to a stranger and then end up being on a news report. So it's like keeping in mind that those stories are real and just being conscious. So, yeah.
So with those experiences, a lot of the stuff, if I'm interpreting what you guys are saying correctly, it seems like a lot of those stuff are more woman focused. Like, I feel like those fears would exist for women in general. Like, if I see somebody, like if I was a woman and I saw somebody following me around. So what is the specificity of a black woman versus like a white woman in general? Or what's the specificity?
I would say you just said it, because it's an intersection. Like, I can't choose between being black or a woman, and therefore it's like, and that's the problem for us. We can never know if it's because I'm black or it's because I'm a woman. It's both. Like, those, I can't take off being black, and I can't stop you from seeing that I'm a woman. So there's an intersection. You know what I mean? So maybe it is for women, like the things that women go through, but at the same time, I'm a black woman, so it might be a little bit worse for me, or for a Latino or something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and then also just like specifically looking at the being followed around the store scenario, like, you can tell if it's because you're a woman or if you're because you're a black woman. Like, it's not more so like a creepy man was trying to get my number and was following me around, but there's this experience that all black people have specifically of being followed around the store because somebody thinks they're stealing. So it's like that you kind of know in that scenario, but I also agree with everything you said.
Yeah.
How do you guys feel in general about some of the programming and things that are specifically for people of color on campus, and what have you guys found the success in that is? And like, walk me through how you guys feel about what's going on campus for spaces.
I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So,
well, any and all.
well, if you guys know of it, but like the Board of Regents and everything that was going on. So our governor decided to pass some type of law policy to where the Board of Regents had to basically do a study on the of the public universities. So that's University of Iowa, Iowa State University, University of Northern Iowa, over DEI, which is diversity, equity and inclusion, like services. So for me, that my DEI is in Marker Union, and it's like up at the top, and that's where like you go for all your cultural services. And I haven't used all of them, but from like my peers, they seem to do very well. I mostly use the CME. It's like a common black space, a common space for black students to like congregate and everything like that. But it's pretty good, and we have a lot of mentoring and opportunities. Like, you can always go up there and grab some food. Like, people are so welcoming and so cool. But, you know, right now we're experiencing like funding pulling from that, and possible, you know, people who work there are no longer working there. So, and for me, it's just like, I already go to a PWI, so it's like, what are you saying? You know what I mean? Do you want only a certain type of students to be here? And it's not even just like, I'm like, when I first started this, I wasn't even thinking of like me as a black student. I was thinking of those with disabilities, you know, sexuality services, veteran services, like all that other type of stuff that they need way outside of myself, because although black is a part of the diversity, there is so much other stuff that makes it diverse.
Sorry, what was the question again?
No, yeah, and that was good. I was even thinking unrelated to the DEI funding. Like, I was kind of, I want you guys to kind of put up a defense against like taking that funding, not like actually a defense, but talk to me about the importance of these programs, and are they effective in what they want to do? And then further, I'm going to ask, what would you guys do if you were creating DEI programs or things for students of color? What would you guys do? But in general, with the existing programs that you guys have now, are they good? Are they bad? I mean, are they effective at what they do? Do you think they help specifically with the problems that you face? Or do you think that they're kind of like not really good, like whitewashed or whatever?
I would say for us, the programs are pretty good, just being that it's like for us, by us. We don't have non-people of color trying to put on for the people of color, which also, on the contrary, I think there is some issue with that, with just separating the spaces and people not wanting to be comfortable enough to be in those spaces. So they kind of, you know, push us to the side. But as for like the multicultural services and organization and centers that we do have here at Iowa State, I think that they're doing a good job, because being that the people creating these programming are actually a part of the communities they're serving, they know our needs and they know what we want, and they can advocate for us. So I would say like those specific departments and programs and organizations, they're doing a good job. The university itself, like I said, they just try to, you know, give us some funding, and they're like, you guys take care of that. We're going to ignore everything that you go through, but you have money to figure it out yourself. So yeah, I guess on a university scale, they're not really doing much.
Yeah, and I would definitely second that. Like we have the programs and stuff, and it's just like when you said that, I was like, we have them, but then they're small, and it's like they're not well known. And I agree with that university part. They don't promote it. They promote only certain ones, and it's just like, well, what are you trying to say? You know what I mean? Because it's like you're promoting certain ones, therefore you're promoting certain students over others. Is how I interpret it. So I don't want to assume, but I know other students might interpret it differently as well. So I would say on the university part, there is like a lot of lack and a big gap in supporting all programs and all like organizations for students.
So if all of these programs were to be just like wiped away, they never existed, and you two were in charge of creating these programs, what kind of stuff or things do you think that the community would benefit from, would need, that you guys would want to advocate for?
I would say the
First of all, that's crazy.
Right, the community needs community. I don't have the solution by myself, but I know like when I do come together in the spaces, like for example, I'm part of NPHC, Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated.
Okay.
But, like we met today, but like when I'm in these spaces, we're more creative together. So yeah, answering that question is kind of difficult just because I don't have the answer to everything, but we would need a space where we can come together regularly. I don't know where my train of thought was going, but I think that's where it would start. The programming itself, I don't think it's terrible, but I think it just needs to be restructured and reevaluated. And I think also like outside of that, it's not even the programming we're doing ourselves, but it's the systems that the university is doing outside of the diversity. Like those systems need to be 100% built from the scratch again, or built from the ground up again, just because like the way they were built, they weren't even meant for us. So like these systems that are in place and that seem like, oh, they're working well, they're not working well for everybody. So we need to be part of the conversation and building up these programs and just structures in general.
I would say two things is that one, that non-students of color should be required for them to learn of culture. Like, I'm not sure if your school does it, but we have like, it's optional in our Blackboard of courses. That's where all our courses are that we're currently taking, of like learning of culture and ethnicity and things of that, and like how to be appropriate in terms of like your language and things like that, and how to be culturally like cautious and appropriate and kind to others when you're coming into their communities. And a lot of students don't take it, and I have these experiences in class where I'm like, bro, you should not have said that. Like, I feel uncomfortable, and it's like I'm the only Black student, so if I walk out, I feel like people think I'm doing extra, you know what I mean? So I feel like if we mandate them to take those, like, and that's for everybody as well, but especially for them, because like it has been mentioned and from my peers, that usually I'm a culture shock to them. So that, and then I would say secondly, is when we have these spaces and programs to come into it, I don't want to say like, no, I'm going to say quietly. Come into it quietly and sit in the back, because I've had a lot of times where spaces are meant, and I can only speak on being Black, so spaces are meant for Black students, and then, you know, my white peers come in and it's just like, that's gone. You know what I mean? It's like, now we don't have a space for one another. And then also there's no learning from one another either. They usually just come and like take over. And it shouldn't be like that, because you have the whole campus. We're just asking for a small space.
So do you think it's kind of difficult to grasp like a space specifically designed for a certain group? Like that makes it could make people uncomfortable a little bit when you're talking about like this space is for this type of person only. And it's interesting though, because the campus is mostly white, you know what I mean? So you said like we have the whole area, but you guys only have this little area. And I guess I wonder what the purpose is. And I think when people are hearing about a specific area for people of color to converse, it seems like you're negating the responsibility to teach white or people not of color how to interact appropriately. You know what I mean? Like, it seems like an avoidance of the problem, although you mentioned literally doing both at the same time. But I think when people hear that, they just like forget about the things that you're doing on more of the education front because of the separation.
And then
I was about to say one thing to that is we do not have to teach white people how to communicate, learn, connect with other communities of color. If I had to learn about myself and my people and my ancestors, I believe that they can go to the library and do the same thing. Not saying that if someone asked me a question that I wouldn't answer it. Like, I would love to educate, but it's also not a requirement. That's not my job daily. And when I say, like, and I'm not saying you were disrespectful or anything. So I just, because people do think like that, and I'm just like, oh, this conversation is not what I want. But it's like when speaking of like Black Student Union, those spaces are meant for us to just relax and be comfortable. And I'm not saying white students can't be there, but when you're there, don't let your identity overcloud the identity in the room. Like there's a purpose of being there, of taking a break from class, of, going through, the whole campus and being the only Black student or a student of color. It's just come to us to relax, listen to our music, talk to one another, encourage one another, be there, and that's all it really is.
Yeah, and then to just reword, because I know we said like space, when we say spaces for us, we don't mean us only though. So like it's not that. It's not you can't come in here, this is for Black people only, but we mean like in this space, we're not going to adapt and change ourselves. Like you said, we're going to listen to our music. We're going to talk the way we talk, whether you can pick up on it or not.
Right.
So it's just more so a safe space for us, but it's not necessarily for us only. We do encourage other people like of any other culture and ethnicity to come and join us as well. And then also on the fact of like what you were saying, we don't have to educate others. Keep in mind that we as people of color are required to learn everything about white people
it wasn't
from
taught.
The beginning. Like we were
Right.
forced that, and there's just a lot of our history that would make better sense because Black history is American history too.
Say that one more
Black
time.
history is American history. So like when you take the Black part out of it, it's like you're only getting a super narrow, non-realistic,
There's a lot of
not
gaps
truthful
that don't make
perspective.
sense.
So it's just like when we say, of course we want you to learn, but it's not our job to always have to be an educator. Like nobody, just like how teachers, when they're off the clock, they're not trying to still have that role. Me, I don't want to, sometimes I just want to be a normal student. I don't have to be a Black student, have to educate. But at the same time, like I am open to having conversations if you want to. Just understand that's not what I'm here for. I'm not a dictionary. Some stuff you can look up on your own. Some TED Talks you can watch on your own or a YouTube video. But don't come to me and that's all you want to ask questions about. So, yeah.
Right.
That's more so what we mean by that.
Yeah.
Yeah. All that, it's all great stuff, by the way. when I meant education, I meant in regards to you guys I think we're talking about programming for how to talk to people of different cultures, and I was talking more about that, not about like, not about like.
I was just, because I've had those conversations. People like,
Definitely.
well, you're racist for like, but you have the whole world, bro. Like you have a space
you don't have
everywhere.
To go specific cities, specific.
Exactly.
locations.
So, well, when it comes to that, when it comes to that, it's just like, because I think for most people, even in their jobs, they have like, I'm trying to think of the
Required
word.
trainings?
Yes, required trainings to go over culture and ethnicity and all this type of stuff. I'm really trying to think of a specific word if it pops in my head. But I've had those in most of my jobs I work with children, but I've had those and it's just like I wish they were required for school because a lot of the jobs, like in college, we're learning now and then we're going to go on to the world. So if they don't learn now, especially just not how to do their job, but like I'm a social work major, so I need to know how to communicate effectively and that, maybe there's certain things like eye contact in certain cultures is disrespectful. So there's things that I have to learn to be able to effectively communicate with somebody and help them with the service that they need. And if I can't do that, then like this person is maybe continuously to be homeless, like because I didn't learn about other cultures. So that's all I'm saying is that especially although it is a PWI and, white students are expected to see mostly them, you will have other students come into classrooms that don't look like you that you need to learn about and be aware of.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and I think that's super. I'm trying to think of the education that I got here. I know we have to take a couple world courses. I can't remember what the exact terminology is called.
Is it the humanities category, the social sciences?
It's like in the social sciences, but it's called like world and humanity, like something like that. I took a class about Native Americans in the movies. You know what I mean? Because it was part of like that. I'd assume it's part of like a DEI requirement of something in education, but it's only like one class, like one credit. So it's not like a diverse education that takes care of everything like what you guys are probably talking about.
Right.
But I did get a lot of training in all of the jobs that I'm in as well, which is really nice too. But it is missing in the education too. And I wonder, like, what can you guys speak to on the importance of that education when it comes to maintaining cultures or understanding cultures? What do you guys find is important when you guys are advocating for that?
I would say having those classes starting like elementary school, to be honest with you, because a lot of the classes, and then it's also they'll become available in high school, but they're like AP classes. So I think that's where you have to like go through one class in order to get to that one.
Optional.
Right. And you shouldn't have to do that. Like it should be required of us, like even as Black people, just to learn of other different cultures. Like Black people ain't the only other people. Like there's so many other people that we learn about. So I think it's just also that as well, and just I don't know, like just not steering away from the conversation at all.
What do you guys find is the importance of preserving culture for like culture's sake? So, what would be the issue if all of our culture just combined into one culture?
I feel like that's the ultimate goal, though, is for all cultures to combine into one, and it just be a everybody thing. You know what I mean? I think say that question one more time.
It comes down to like honor and respect of like why it started, and I think just like paying those tributes and honor is like respect. I guess that's just what's most important in a culture. Like Black people have our culture, and just respecting like that is our culture, that is our experience, and that we were forced into that culture. But that doesn't mean like you have to be scared of it. You know what I'm saying? Like
right.
The term being invited to the cookout. Like you can, if you're invited, like you can be in these spaces, you can enjoy our culture, but also respecting that it is ours and that we have it for a reason, and there's a deeper purpose than maybe you don't see in the big picture. Like for example, our music. Like it's not just. We can't say, oh, you can't listen to hip hop because you're not Black. Like, like we don't say stuff like that, but just honoring, like, this is ours. We did create it. So just respecting that and not trying to take credit for that or call it your own and disrespect the people who actually did build that up. So those type of things. But other than that, like, I think kind of what you were saying, like, we want to have that cohesive enjoyment of others' cultures, like I shouldn't say, I really like that, but that's their culture. You know what I'm saying? Like just finding that way to be a part of it in a respectful manner, and you can't do that without asking the culture itself, like, asking the person and the people of that culture, like, how can I be a part of this in a respectful manner? So.
Yeah, I would say that's why a lot of people are having a lot of problems with cultural appropriation. So
because it's not in a respectful manner.
It's on. Where would you draw the line for that respect then? Like, what would you say is crossing the line where you no longer respect somebody, even if you're trying to like be in their culture? Or what are some experiences that you guys have? I would say
understanding if you're not a part of a culture, then you're not a part of a culture. Like I don't know how to word that better, but if you're not Black, like don't try to portray as Black. Or I don't know if you've seen in the media where some people are like, oh well, I'm transitioning from a white person to a Black person, because you actually, if you know what we go through, like, why would you say, oh, I want to be profiled and disrespected and deal with racism? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's disrespectful for you to, you can appreciate our culture and, like, maybe the stuff we do, but, like, I feel like just drawing the line is just understanding, like, even though you respect it, that's not you. Like, I'm not Hispanic, so I can't even try to like go into those cultures and just like try to be like.
I feel like mocking them.
It's mocking them and their experience and their struggles and So I think that's just drawing the line. Is that part?
I would say I just find it disrespectful because I feel like a lot of people want Black things, but they don't want to be Black, and it's because they know what comes with being Black. Like we have a target on the front, back, side, up and down, everywhere. Like everywhere we go, we're just a target in general. So I feel like it's just disrespectful, when people appropriate our hairstyles and they don't understand why we do the things that we do to our hair, because our hair can do it and yours cannot. So we're not being disrespectful in saying don't do that to your hair. We're saying, hey, girl, I don't want your hair to fall out. You know what I mean? So I think when you
that's
just
not
like
for you,
right, and let me help find what is for you so you can have your hair. You know what I mean? But when you take from our community and don't give us credit, like there's times, where people have done things and they've made it popular or changed the name when it has already been out there for like
hundreds of years,
centuries. You know what I mean? You did not make box braids. You did not make this music. You know what I mean? And it's like, why is it so hard to like give ownership where it was due?
And so the issue isn't necessarily then with them doing the things. It's more about like the credit that's given and kind of the attitude of the person.
Yeah, I would say because it's like I have seen white girls get braids and somehow their whole personality changed. And it's like, when I get braids, my personality doesn't change. It's like they adapt a black personality. I don't even know what that is, but they've made
stereotypes.
it. You know, like stereotypes. So it's just, that is what becomes disrespectful. Like when it's like you're putting on a black like skin, I don't get to take mine off. That's disrespectful because I have to go through this every day. So you doing that, it's mocking me. You get to take it off. You get to parade as a black person whenever you want to, but this is my life. So, and that's disrespectful.
Okay, but like if like a white person grew up with a black family and was with for their entire life and was culturally grown up with that person, lived only in that culture for their life, there wouldn't be like the same issue. It's more of like when somebody is portraying it, or if there's like a dishonesty in it. Is that kind of like where the line is?
No, I would say even if you grew up, if a white person grew up in a black household and family, you're still not black. So even though like there's things that like are part of the culture, and it's like if they grew up in that family, that's I don't know. I feel like this is a very overly too broad conversation almost, because it's like scenario by scenario. But at the end of the day, like that white person, once they go into the world, they're not going to, their family's black, so I'm going to treat them black. No, they're not. People aren't going to know that. People are still going to treat them one way. They're still probably not going to get that same look that we always get. They're not always going to get the same treatment. Like they still have a privilege above it just because they look different. When people initially look at them, they're not going to, their family's black, so I'm going to treat them black. People aren't going to do that. So it's like there's still a level of privilege that they have over all black people. So it's just like to that extent. But I feel like I have met people who are white and they've grown up in those black neighborhoods. I don't know, like they're accustomed to the culture, but they also don't try to act black. Like there's still a difference. I don't know how to word it. Like they don't, their struggle isn't ours. They don't overstep lines. But they know their struggle isn't exactly ours. They may have struggles, not saying that, white people don't have those traumas, but it's not the same. And they understand that just growing up. So I feel like it's less about, I don't know. I don't know how to explain it, but
yeah. Yeah, I think the reason why I asked this and why I'm going down this train of conversation is because kind of what I said at the beginning of this episode is that it's really hard to understand what culture means when you don't have a culture. Right. And so I'm trying to understand, like, what is this line of culture versus race? And then where do you guys put that? And how does it affect how you view people? So, like, if somebody grew up with an 100% black culture, what's the difference between the culture and then the race? And does the race afford you the culture even if you weren't cultured that way? You know what I mean? And so, I mean, what do you guys have? What are you guys' thoughts on that?
Are you saying if a white person
So, like,
grew
if
up?
the race... Okay, I get what you're saying. So, race is more so, like, the color of our skin. So, race is, like, black people. Even though you didn't say, like, going into ethnicity, not all black people are the same ethnicity. So, just knowing those differences, race does... like influence our cultures because we were black, we were treated a certain type of way. We had to create like a safe way of living and a lifestyle. But they can be separate in the sense that like if you take the race away. I don't know. Where was I going with that? Ask the question again, because I understood what you were saying.
Yeah, no.
But, no, say it again, because I did not.
I didn't understand what you're saying, though.
It's a really complicated question. Like, what's the difference between race and culture?
Okay, yeah.
Most importantly, though, for those weird cases, so like if a black person grew up in a white and is the most like white cultured person you've ever met, is culture defined by the issues that you have to deal with, or is it more defined by a group ideology? And like, walk me through what that means.
I think culture is more so a way of living that you had to create. And just for us, race it shaped our culture because it's because of the color of our skin that made us shape the culture, if that makes sense. Right. So that's kind of the difference. So even if you grew up in the culture, but you're not the race, like, it's still separate, because I will say that there are black people actually who've grown up not around black people at all. So they may not know as much of that culture because that just wasn't the way of living they were forced to have. So I don't know if that makes better sense. So if you are not black, but you were in that culture, like you're going to behave that way in those customs, but you're just not attached to the race part of it. Right. But the race created the culture. The culture didn't create the race. That makes sense.
No, yeah, I definitely saying it again. I see what you're saying.
I talk very convoluted.
No, you are fine. Sometimes I'm like, oh, that was a big word. Yeah. Like I'm trying to put them together. No, yeah, I definitely I agree with everything you said, Kierra. And it's just like if a black person grew up in a white family, they're just lacking Black culture because they don't have it around them. Like, it's not present. So they're still Black, and they can still very much be targeted even if they're around, their white family. It's just they're lacking the Black culture. So a Black person coming to a HBCU, they can be shocked because they don't understand, like, the terminology and all the things going on.
Do you think there's a negative association with that? Like, if you met a Black person that wasn't, like, culture, do you think that you would find that that's like a bad thing?
I don't think it's a bad thing. And I don't want to say it because I know people don't like feeling sorry for. It was just like, oh man, you finna be shocked. You know what I mean? Because it's hard. Like, because I'm still learning. Like, I don't want people to think like, oh, I got the whole Black thing figured out, because everything changes for us every day. Like, there's something that's just happening. It's like, oh, the Black community just got hit. We need to, like, recuperate. But I would just feel like, oh, this is going to be like an experience for you. You know what I mean? And it's like, that's when, as a Black community, we should call people in and not out, like, for them to be able to lean on us to help them understand and not be, like, taken advantage of if they don't understand what's going on.
Yeah, I second that.
Yeah. Do you feel like there is a community around that would feel that that's a bad thing, not in a more sense of this person's going to struggle to kind of acclimate, but like, let's say there was a Black person who was cultured really, white, like has no affiliation with Black culture at all, and then they did not want to get accustomed to Black culture. They're like, I would rather have white culture. Do you guys see that as a bad thing, or is it just like really?
It's going to be difficult for them.
I would say that's unfortunate because I actually have met people like that, but at that point it's like, yeah, you just got to at that point, that's their canon event. They need to go down that path.
I'm going to just pray for you.
Right. They're going to have their culture shock. But like, I want to say, well, I think it is harmful to our community just because like they sometimes can enable that like racism if they're around that and those stereotypes just because they haven't seen the other side of the story. So I think that can be harmful because I have had conversations with non-Black people. And it's like, oh, well, I heard a Black person say this, so it's cool. And it's like, no, it's not cool. They just didn't know. But there's just that ignorance there. But, yeah, you can only pray for them. You can't hate anybody for their experiences. It's just their canon event and their culture shock. So, yeah.
Yeah. And, well, I don't mean to have you guys educate me on that.
I mean, this is your podcast.
On these things. I'm super interested in that. I'm a psych major, so it's all about, like, getting to know people and what experiences make them. That's the whole purpose of this podcast.
I took a couple psych classes. I love it.
Yeah, it's super fun. It's super fun, and I feel like I've learned a ton from you guys too. And I wanted to kind of circle back to your purpose and the show that you guys do. And if there was kind of like one big message that each of you could give out to every single Black woman that's coming into college before they come here, what would that message be? What thing can you prepare them for, warn them of, or help them get through? Or
I would say the biggest thing I would just tell people is to be open-minded. And I know that's like very generic advice, but kind of just in a space of learning that people have to learn things for themselves, if that makes sense. Like, we're giving them the tools. But I feel like even our podcast that we have now, if I were to hear that in high school, I feel like most of that would go over my head. You know what I'm saying? So it's just like, you can't teach somebody if they're not going to actually receive what you're learning. So I think it's just more so being open-minded and telling them to like be patient with themselves, just because like some stuff I don't know. I feel like these experiences, there's nothing that would have prepared me for this. Like, I've been Black, obviously, my whole life. I've had these conversations my whole life, but yet nothing would have prepared me for coming here. So I just feel like, I mean, there might be some advice out there, but for me, at least speaking from my perspective, like there's not much advice that would have just like, that would have really just actually stuck with me and actually been useful. So I think that's just the biggest thing. But
to be like ready for advice.
Just be ready for advice, be ready for a culture shock, be open-minded, but be patient. Yeah,
I would say for not only just young Black women, but just like people of color coming into college, don't dim your light. Like, and I'm speaking from experience. When I got here, I was so focused on certain things, and I was still new to my journey with God. And it was just like, I was like, oh, well, I need to dim myself to just basically assimilate to everybody else. And I would say, don't dim yourself. Also provide grace for people. Like, you don't always assume that it's race, because I did deal with race-based stress, which I wish they would talk about more on campus. Is just when students of color are feeling stressed due to race of the race around them, you know? So I just wish they would talk about that more, but give people grace and just don't dim yourself. Like, God's going to take you far, and, you know, he's in a journey. There's people have different journeys and they're at a different place in their journey. So just provide them grace and continue yours, and maybe it'll circle around and you'll like that person. You'll have a really cool conversation.
You know, I'd love to give you an opportunity to talk about that race-based stress a little more. Is that something that you like looked into, or like what is that?
I was diagnosed.
What that means. Yeah, what is that? Walk me through that.
So, I think this was definitely last semester, spring, and I was just going through like a funk, and I had previously experienced like isolation, which we've talked on our podcast before. Like, in this new journey with God, he's going to put you in a period of isolation. So I thought it was that, but it was just like it was taking like a toll on my body. I was tired every day. Like, I just had no motivation, no strength to do anything, and it was like, and I also had a problem with one of my professors who was white, which didn't make it any better. And like, I felt like she just like pointed me out in front of the whole entire class. So she called me out and didn't call me in on it. So we just started like therapy services on campus. So I asked for a therapist, and I made sure it was like a Black counselor, because I didn't know, because I was scared to talk about white things with a white counselor. And she also mentioned like talking about biases. If I did talk about white things with a white person, their biases might come into play where they feel like I'm being disrespectful to them. But basically, after everything I told her, it was just race-based stress. So it's like your body takes on the stress due to like the race around you, which is usually they are the majority and you're the minority. So it's like your body is trying to like get used to that, I guess. And like it's like it's the little things people can do and say in class. Like, I was just telling her things. She was like, yeah, that's like race-based stress. So it's just the little things people do with not knowing that they're probably doing it, but being disrespectful or a hint at racism, you know what I mean? So yeah.
What do you do about that? How did that evolve?
I mean, for that, as far as I know, because it was new to me, I was like, whoa, they should really talk about this, because like at UNI, we do have a small percentage of students of color, but they're still large on campus. So it was just like, for that, there is no medication. I just had to change my perspective, and I had to I have a big faith in God, so I had to just go back to him and just ask him for help. So, I mean, all I can say is just change your perspective, and if you have any type of faith, to lean on that, because I knew that I still had to stay here. Like, I had to get my degree, so therefore I had to learn not to take every little thing that one of my white peers do to heart, because it takes a toll on me more than it takes a toll on them.
Yeah, and that's a really good. I was wondering what that perspective was that you switched to, because there's this weird line of, when it comes to, or at least from my understanding, like race-based issues, on what education can we do to prevent these issues, and then what education can we do to handle these better. Mm-hmm. And there's always like this fighting line of like, how can I do as much as I can to make sure that this doesn't happen as often? And then how can I do as much as I can to make sure that I react the best way that I possibly can when it does happen? Mm-hmm. And I could see that the stress coming from that could definitely just harm somebody. So the perspective of not taking everything to heart as much as you can, I think, is super important to talk to everybody about. Yeah. It's very difficult for people to offend me as a person for any reason, mm-hmm. just because I'm trying not to take these things to heart. And so anybody taking those things, I feel like, can benefit from that. But even in like a race-specific scenario, I think that that's a really good mindset to have as well, just because mm-hmm. there are certain things that you can't control while also controlling as much as you can. Right. So yeah. It's a cool balance. It's a really interesting. I've never heard that before.
No, I mean, when she told me, I said, wow. Yeah. Like I was stuck for like a day, and she gave me methods of like, she gave me like what are they called? What are those things you store in? Like the storage bins. Let's say storage bin. She gave me the method in your mind. If you don't want to talk about it or deal with it, put it in the storage bin, put it away, and then later, opening it up. But I just really had to switch my perspective from, it's not because they're racist or it's because I'm Black. It's probably because they've never learned not to do that, or they've always thought it was okay because there was no opposing perspective for them. Mm-hmm. So, and that just helped me not to take less things to heart and just truly like live up to my potential and stop dimming my light.
Mm-hmm. And then on that note, like, because I know, like, throughout this whole episode, we mentioned, like, race, or we'll say racist, but I guess I just want to point out that, like, most people on Iowa State, I would say, aren't racist. They're just ignorant. which also means uneducated, because I know a lot of people, like, when you hear ignorant, it's like, oh, well, like, you know, so I don't want people to, like, be closed-minded and think we're attacking them or being disrespectful, but it's just simply, like, you know, you're just uneducated. Like, it doesn't make you racist to be uneducated, but, like, it makes a difference being uneducated. It definitely affects people greatly and can change your life literally from you being uneducated.
No, and I appreciate you for saying that, because I don't want to, you know, that I would definitely say ignorant, and I apologize for the times that I use racist, because I definitely think ignorance is like a moment, but I do believe racism is a lifestyle. That's a lifestyle that you choose to live, or unknowingly, because like you've never had culture to oppose that.
Yeah, maybe I should have asked to clarify that earlier.
No, you're fine, but it's also a word that I have to be cautious of, and it's like, I don't want to say I label people that, but it's just like I have to be cautious of it, because it's like, if you are, that's dangerous for me, because like, you don't like me. You probably like nothing about me or anything that has to do with diversity. But at the same time, if you say something that is racist, it doesn't make you racist. It's probably a moment of ignorance, and just you know, be educated. Don't take that to heart either, because you know, I would rather be educated than go through life and say something wrong again, because you might get the right person who might knock you out. So,
well, and that's true. 'Cause racist is a really powerful word to give to somebody, and I feel like if there's one thing that maybe white people can struggle with, it's just that constant fear. And when having this conversation, maybe I've been super racist this whole conversation, but I've really tried to. No, I mean, like, in like your perspective, I'm like kidding. I really don't think so. But I don't have a fear that I have been, because my understanding of myself is that I just don't know these things, and I'm asking because I would like to, you know what I mean? And so I try not to have the fear that I'm being that way, but everybody learns something at some point. Like, nobody's born and knowing something. You had to have experienced it or sought it out and know that you have to know something. So I really try hard not to pin that kind of stuff on people. And I think that's an awesome, really mature perspective for both of you to have, that it's like, it's not necessarily that you're a hateful person. It's just that you don't know.
It's just a moment.
It's a very difficult thing for people to accept, not even in the conversation, just from things in general. Like, oh, you've never heard this song? It's like, what? I'm not born knowing every song on the planet. You know, it's that way with everything. So it's a really mature perspective for you guys to have. So
we try to stay mature.
Yeah,
it's hard.
Good. It's hard. It's hard. It's hard for everyone. It's hard for everyone. But I wanted to give this last opportunity for you guys to say any words of wisdom that you guys have, and just to do any plugging for you guys' show or for any other things that you guys are doing. But yeah, the floor is kind of yours to wrap this one up and end it out for us. But if there's any last moments, I'd like to give each of you a little moment to say what you need to say.
Well, first, I would like to say thank you for having us on this podcast episode. It was definitely very good conversation, and I'm glad that you asked those questions, because I know a lot of people have those questions, but they just don't have the courage to actually say them. So I appreciate you for saying those out loud. So those were very good questions. I would just say, final thoughts, listen to our podcast. It'll be a very good way to educate yourself and maybe build up those questions in your mind and get you thinking a little differently. But yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that's good. And I would just say for my peers of color is when a non-student of color asks you a question, you don't have to educate them, but they have to build up that courage. So, you know, clap for them for building up that courage, and just take it as a moment for both of you to grow, you know, as we want the world and towards the world, like the way it wants to be. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, reminder, our podcast, Black Girl in College Podcast, we post bi-weekly on Mondays.
Yes.
On all platforms, so Spotify, Apple Music, Pandora, iHeartRadio, some other places I forget about.
Yep. Yeah. I think, then Thursday on YouTube.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and then our website is at blackgirlincollege.com.
Yes.
Well, this was an awesome episode. Thank you guys for being on. And I'll keep watching your show, and it was awesome having you guys.
Yeah.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you.